There is a pattern behind everything in your life. It's pain or pleasure, happiness or misery, success or failure. The hidden key to self-empowerment is the knowledge of these patterns which direct our lives. Sacred geometry teaches the master patterns which create our world and which are the true secret behind all manifestation. This series removes the veils of previously hidden knowledge. You will learn key subtle energy patterns which, when activated regularly in your own energy field, can change your life. We will explore together the hidden patterns which manifest everything in physical existence. This is a journey of empowerment. By learning how to work with subtle energy patterns known to ancient traditions, you can initiate an alchemical transformation within yourself. This process can empower your individual evolution of consciousness and thereby assist the raising of consciousness on our planet.
Welcome back. I'm so glad that you could tune back in. I really mean that. That's not just a scripted line for the opening greeting of this show. I'm truly happy that you're here with me today, because at this point, we might not have much time left. I've said it over and over, and you already know if you've been following along, but the paradigm shift is already in full effect. We're witnessing firsthand, in real time, the evolution of humanity as a whole as well as individually, as we grapple with the changes in our culture as well as the changes in our perspective of self-identity. With the advent of the internet and social media, we're rapidly accelerating to a singularity of technological advancement and artificial intelligence, as well as what impact that technology is going to have on our psyche. And, well, not only that, but also the impact that we are having on life on this planet, on the biosphere from which we've evolved from and into. Now, as we cross this threshold of conscious awareness and alignment, from one alignment to the next, it's my hope to help steer and get back on track, to help guide this narrative surrounding our collective understanding of identity and the nature of reality and our collective future on this planet, to prevent the maleficent and nefarious entities and groups attempting to hijack the narrative for their own agenda, distorting the truth and misleading the masses. Now, as grand and idealistic, if not optimistic and vague of a statement that is, of a dream to strive for, I mean just that. Because the truth is, the truth about the UFO phenomena, which I've been ranting on for several episodes now, over 2 seasons, it has direct correlation to the origins and the ascent of us as a species to becoming the dominant species on this planet. The patterns are there, abundant and evident, whether it be through religious texts and scripture, or through myths and legend, or recent archaeological and other scientific discoveries whose revelations are fundamentally reshaping the way that we see ourselves and the modern world in which we've built. It is undeniable that, one, we are a species with amnesia, to quote Graham Hancock, and that, two, the truth isn't only out there. Matter of fact, it may have never been about what's out there. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, is in here, right here. Now, it's clear that the reality that we experience as we know it has a history and a nature to it that we have for far too long ignored or taken for granted. If we don't craft and tell our own narrative, then we'll let the government and the elite craft it for us. They will tell us who we are, what our potential is, and what our worth as a human being is. We've already seen it happen, time and time again, repeated throughout history. And yet, here we are, still waiting for CNN and Fox News for the truth to finally come out about what's going on.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Once the government finally provides a press release, of course. In order for me to talk about this cosmic knowledge, these extraterrestrial or transdimensional beings, what the government really knows and what they've covered up regarding the UFO phenomena, it means that I have to also break down and take a deep dive into some dense and complex, often controversial scientific theories and subject matter that are not only novel and cool to know, but have deep underlying implications about the world that we live in and experience every day, if only we cared to look, or knew to look. But if you're one of those, I gotta see it to believe it kind of people, then, well, let me just tell you, you're gonna miss out on a lot and end up wondering why so many people are preparing for a storm of change that you can't see coming. Let me just put it this way. What you see with your eyes, to begin with, isn't even a fraction of a percent of what is really there.
Maybe you're right. Wait a minute, where are we?
Oh, sorry. Lights. That's enough. Lights.
What the hell just happened? Where'd all that go?
The water America drinks so conveniently from their taps is laced with a chemical that inhibits the ability to see certain frequencies of light. Those frequencies are used in this room.
So it's all just invisible?
You and everyone else in America do not have the ability to see the things in this room. You'd be surprised how often we use this.
Wild.
To answer your question,
because our human eyes can only interpret visible light, which is a very small fraction of the wide-ranging electromagnetic spectrum. Only a tiny sliver of a spectrum that, for the majority of recorded human history, and I mean like 99%, we never knew existed, let alone knowing that by harnessing that knowledge, we would then be able to communicate ideas and transmit data instantaneously across vast distances. Listen, we know that things we cannot see exist. Just as much as we know that atoms exist, we know that gamma rays and ultraviolet, microwave, radio waves exist. Although we will never be able to see it with our own eyes, we have marvelous brains that have allowed us the ability to create technology and instruments that can act as our senses and observe what our senses cannot.
Is there an external reality? Of course there's an external reality. The world exists, it's just that we don't see it as it is. We can never see it as it is. In fact, it's even useful to not see it as it is. And the reason is because we have no direct access to that physical world, other than through our senses. And because our senses conflate multiple aspects of that world, we can never know whether our perceptions are in any way accurate. It's not so much do we see the world in the way that it really is, but do we actually even see it accurately? And the answer is no, we don't.
Evolution by natural selection has shaped us with perceptions that are designed to keep us alive. So if I see a snake, don't pick it up. If I see a cliff, don't jump off. If I see a train, don't step in front of it. We have to take our perceptions seriously, but that does not entitle us to take them literally.
Sometimes it's really difficult for people to understand that the data that your brain is receiving is meaningless, because when they open their eyes, they look around, they say, well, I see everything. What do you mean it's meaningless? So at this most basic level, we don't represent even the information we're getting in any accurate way.
Every single photo of space, I mean, every interstellar cloud, every star, every galactic nuclei, every galaxy, was rendered from a spectrum of light that our eyes cannot see.
There's a lot going on here, especially with these beautiful arcs. But for our purposes, the most important takeaway is that even if I could attach a giant telescope to you and put you out in space, you would not be able to see this, because this is infrared light. It does nothing to the rod and cone cells of your eyes. In fact, that's the case with most of the light in the universe. As you may know, the light that we can see, the light that does something to the rod and cone cells of your eyes to create a current on your optic nerve and eventually register in your brain that you've seen something, is only a small part of the light that is out there. If you only see a small part of the light that's out there, you're only seeing a small part of what makes the light. So in order to really understand what's going on in the universe, we'll have to use all the kinds of light. Now, as you may know, light is a wave, like waves on the ocean. And so we can characterize it by the wavelength, that is the distance between the tops of the waves. Shorter wavelength corresponds to higher energy and vice versa. So we can also think about light in terms of energy. Now, in sort of the middle range of the energies here, we have the visible light that our eyes can see, from red on the lowest energy end up through the colors of the rainbow to purple. Now, when you get to purple, if you go to higher energy, it's not that there's no light there, it's just that your eyes can't see it. And so at higher energy than purple, we have what we call ultraviolet light, and beyond that, X-ray light, and beyond that, what we call gamma rays. And then if you go to lower energy than red light, it's not that there's no light there, it's just that your eyes can't see it. And so below red light, we have what we call infrared light, and then microwave light, and then what we call radio waves. Now, with all these different kinds of light having different energies, different processes in the universe will give rise to them. So in order to understand what's going on in the universe at different energy levels, we'll have to be able to study all the different kinds of light. What you see here are a bunch of little stars and galaxies. And in particular, we're interested in one little galaxy that's in the middle there. Now I want to show you what this same exact little patch of sky looks like in radio light. If you had radio eyes, you would see that. Quite different, right? Now let's have an example from ultraviolet light. I want to show you a picture of a nearby galaxy as it appears in the visible light that our eyes can see. As you see, it's mostly a fuzzy glow. Now we'll look at the same exact galaxy in ultraviolet light. You can see that it's much more concentrated in a few regions, in particular these spiral arms. This is where the hot, short-lived stars are. They're hot, so they're glowing in the higher energy ultraviolet light. These are the stars that do interesting things like explode. And what I want to do here is make a map of the whole sky. So just like we can take the round Earth and make a flat map out of it, let's do the same thing with the round sky that surrounds the Earth. And so if we do that in visible light, it looks like this. Now the bright band across the middle there, that's the disk of our galaxy as we're looking through it, the Milky Way. Now let's look at the same thing, a map of the whole sky, but now in gamma rays. Clearly, there's something quite different going on there. And so those were some hopefully pretty examples of how, in order to build up a systematic understanding of what's going on in the universe, we have to use all the kinds of light. Without doing that, we wouldn't know what black holes can do. We wouldn't know what most of the ordinary matter in the universe is up to. And we wouldn't know what makes up a galaxy. So next time you look up at the sky on a dark night or through a telescope someone has set up, think about what you're seeing, but also think about what's there that you can't see.
Light is so much stranger than you might think. Sure, it may seem simple enough, traveling around the universe, delivering energy from one place to another. It helps us see. It provides life to plants, and thus to our planet generally. It has a reputation for being very fast. And yet, for a source of energy that has become synonymous with greater understanding, light is surprisingly difficult to understand. Light helps us see other things better, sure, but when scientists tried to look at light itself, it was surprisingly difficult. Experiments in the last 200 years or so have proven that what light appears to be and what light is are actually two different things, for one simple reason. Annoyingly enough, light behaves differently when you're not looking at it compared to when you are. What is the true nature of light? Why is it behaving strangely when we're not looking? And what does it say about how the universe really works? If you are familiar with the properties of light, you will know that light is actually waves of electrical and magnetic charge that are constantly propagating with each other forwards in a straight line. However, let's take a look at that word wave. A wave in the sea is the propagation of energy moving through the water. If you were to look at an individual particle of water, it's not really going anywhere except in a circle. And yet, because it passes energy to the atoms next to it, energy travels towards the shore in a constant motion that goes all the way to the beach. Similarly, a sound wave moves by passing energy between air particles, with each particle only moving a tiny bit, becoming energized and then passing that energy to the next particle in line. But in our vacuum of space, where there is nothing in it, where our photon of light is traveling in waves, have you ever stopped to wonder what exactly is waving? This hints at a fundamental something that exists even in nothing, a fabric that makes up all of reality itself. Quantum physicists call this something a quantum field. Quantum fields are tough to wrap your head around.
And that's where the open-minded skeptic needs to jump in to help balance out the conversation and guide the narrative once again, because while yes, it certainly would be very difficult for the average person to wrap their heads around the complex, dense formulas, equations, theories, and ideas that have been cultivated and refined over generations. I wouldn't expect a child who hasn't mastered their basic arithmetic to then, recite the quadratic formula, let alone explain its purpose and significance. Listen, there have been people who have existed on this planet who have shaped history, who have built nations, who have reached the highest pinnacles of human achievement, self-actualized, and reached their fullest potential, all without knowing the decay rate of the carbon-14 atom. You know what I'm saying? There's an aspect to reality that scientists can't seem to grapple with, can't wrap their heads around, and is something that they've intentionally overlooked because it represents a variable in the equation that breaks the model every time. And what I'm talking about is the nature of consciousness, the hard problem of the qualitative experience of conscious awareness.
Our senses are also making up the tastes, odors, and colors that we experience. They're not properties of an objective reality, they're actually properties of our senses that they're fabricating. By objective reality, I mean what most physicists would mean, and that is that something is objectively real if it would continue to exist, even if there were no creatures to perceive it. Colors, odors, tastes, and so on are not real in that sense of objective reality. They are real in a different sense. They're real experiences. Your headache is a real experience, even though it could not exist without you perceiving it. So it exists in a different way than the objective reality that physicists talk about. We always assume that our senses are telling us the truth. So it was quite a stunning shock to me when I realized that it's not just tastes, odors, and colors that are the fabrications of our senses and are not objectively real. Space-time itself and everything within space-time, objects, electrons, quarks, the sun, the moon, their shapes, their masses, their velocities, all of these physical properties are also constructions.
I'll try to put it like this. I'll use an analogy. I would say it's like this. If I put a cake on the table and I asked a scientist, what is that? A scientist probably would be able to identify all of the ingredients that went into this cake, would probably be able to provide somewhat of the recipe of how it was made, be able to say when the egg was added, when the milk was added, when was it put in the oven, for how long it was in there for, at what temperature it baked at, how long it was allowed to rest. A scientist would be able to give me all of these descriptions of this cake. However, if I were then to ask the same scientist, to describe or define that experience of eating a cake that is deemed the most savory, most fresh, and delicious cake universally, if I was to ask that scientist to define that experience of eating it when you were famished, well, that scientist would probably describe the experience in terms of the anatomical function of taste, and describe the chemistry of glucose interacting with your taste bud receptors, or your olfactory senses playing a significant part in the experience. But as far as that qualitative experience of what it's like to eat something when you are extremely famished and it's delicious, or to look at a beautiful scene, to gaze on a beautiful sunset, to hold hands with someone you love, to, hold your son in your arms. These are intrinsic qualitative experiences to a conscious observer, but they are nonetheless real. We can all attest that those experiences were real. And therefore, they're an aspect of this space-time reality that scientists are overlooking while trying to come up with this unified theory of everything. Think about it. What good would that gorgeous sunset, or the night sky filled with billions of twinkling stars, what would be the point of any of it if there were no eyes to see or a conscious mind to marvel upon it? It's often said that we are the way the universe gets to experience itself. I believe that consciousness is at the root of all existence, not just at the root of your own being. And as the saying goes, we're all connected. Everything is connected. So by recognizing the consciousness within, you will then be better able to not only recognize, but connect with the consciousness that flows through the world around you and throughout all existence.
However paradoxical it sounds, if we think of what is visible as just what projects to the eyes, we see much more than is visible. Let me give you an example. I walk into a room and there's graffiti on the wall. And imagine it's graffiti that I find really offensive. I look at it, I flush, my heart starts to race, I'm outraged, I'm taken aback. Of course, if I didn't know the language in which it was written, I could have had exactly the same retinal events and the same events in my early visual system without any corresponding reaction. Much more shows up for us than just what projects into our nervous system.
Space-time, the sun and the moon, physical objects, everything that we see inside of space and time is just our visualization tool. The reality we're interacting with is nothing like the visualization tool. It's nothing like space and time. We've made the rookie mistake of assuming that our headset, VR, our visualization tool, is the final reality. It's just a rookie mistake. It's like someone who's played Grand Theft Auto so long, they have no idea there's a reality besides Grand Theft Auto. We're like that right now. If you just look at your face in the mirror, if you look, what you see directly is just skin, hair, and eyes. That's all you see. And if you looked inside, if someone opened your skull up and looked, you just see neurons and so forth. But what you know firsthand that you cannot see is your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, your love of music, your mood. It's all in the VR experience. No physical object, including my body, is conscious. Strictly speaking, my brain isn't conscious because my brain, in fact, doesn't even exist unless I render it, right? So if you're playing Grand Theft Auto,
I'm playing a VR version of, I got the steering wheel in front of me, I'm holding the steering wheel. If I look to the side, I no longer render the steering wheel, and there is no steering wheel. When I look here, I render it, and now there is a steering wheel. The same thing is true, strictly speaking, of neurons and brains. They're there when you render them, they're not there when you don't. It's a VR system that you render objects in space and time as you need them, because they're part of your visualization tool, and then you garbage collect them. You delete them when you don't need them. Your life and my life right now is we're in a simulator, a space-time simulator, and we've been given, like an AI system, we've been given certain intrinsic desires. So my wife is an artist. So there's billions of humans, and there are billions of different ways that we explore in music, in art, in literature, in science, various kinds of science, meditation. So we're at sports. There are all sorts of ways that consciousness is exploring through us. And there is not like one is the best. I don't know what we're doing outside of space and time. That's part of what I want to understand, is what are we actually doing? I don't know what I'm actually doing. I know what I'm doing under a description. Like I'm moving my hand right now, and if I grab a steering wheel in my car, I know what I'm doing under a space-time description, but I don't know in ultimate reality what I'm really doing. It's just like the VR player, when they turn the steering wheel in Grand Theft Auto, they know what they're doing in the language of the game. I'm turning a steering wheel. But what they're really doing in terms of the supercomputer, right, which in that metaphor would be the deeper reality, they're toggling voltages and magnetic fields and circuits that they have no idea. There's probably trillions of voltage togglings going on for one turn of the wheel. All they see is a turn of the wheel. That's their notion of cause and effect. It's trivial. The real cause and effect is trillions of voltages getting toggled in fractions of a second. It's much, much more complicated. So when I talk evolution, I'm only going to be talking about assuming the headset. And I'm within the framework of the headset, because evolutionary theory is only a headset theory. It's not a theory of consciousness beyond space and time. Consciousness is like a kid in a candy store. It's a never-ending exploration that is in principle never-ending. We call Tom and Don are just parts of this overall exploration of consciousness and all of its possibilities. Our little bit that we're exploring right now, as rich as it seems to us, is trivial compared to all the possibilities that Gödel says are out there. But it may help us to open our minds to the possibilities for deeper theories of what's going on outside the headset.
So it's very interesting. We do these theories because we can learn from them.
When you try to address the nature of things, you may find that asking different questions requires different ways of processing the underlying reality. For instance, in understanding the human mind, to understand it physically requires one kind of processing, and there's every reason to think that we already have fundamental physical laws that are adequate to that kind of treatment. But to understand how a person works, how thought processes, moods, and so forth add up to a personality and a human actor will require quite different ways of understanding and quite different ways of processing the underlying information structure.
See, the source of all light is in the eye. If there were no eyes in this world, the sun would not be light. You evoke light out of the universe. In the same way, you, by virtue of having a soft skin, evoke hardness out of wood. Wood is only hard in relation to a soft skin. It's your eardrum that evokes noise out of the air. You, by being this organism, call into being the whole universe of light and color and hardness and heaviness and everything, you see? But in the mythology that we've sold ourselves on during the end of the 19th century, when people discovered how big the universe was, and that we live on a little planet in a solar system on the edge of a galaxy, which is a minor galaxy, everybody thought, we're really unimportant after all. God isn't there and doesn't love us, and nature doesn't give a damn. And we put ourselves down, see? But actually, it's this little funny microbe, tiny thing, crawling on this little planet that's way out somewhere, who has the ingenuity, by nature of this magnificent organic structure, to evoke the whole universe out of what would otherwise be mere quanta. There's jazz going on.
Okay, now that we have thoroughly discussed the weird nature of reality and the way we see it, the fact that reality and matter are both objectively real, but also an illusion and fabrication of the mind to help us survive and navigate this world. Well, in order to understand the true depths and meaning of what I just said, it's time that we take a dive deeper. And when I say deep, I mean deep, deep. Because in order to understand or discuss how these non-human entities are able to traverse the depths of space or interdimensional planes of the universe, we need to first start off by establishing what is the fabric of space-time in which they're traversing. Do we truly understand it? Again, you cannot study an organism without also studying the environment in which it resides, because it's the environment which shapes its behavior and function, and vice versa. I cannot explain the nature of your legs without conversely discussing the nature of the terrain in which those legs evolved and adapted to traverse. If you lived in the ocean, you wouldn't have much use for your legs, now would you? Okay, well, let's just jump straight into it, shall we? I mean, what is this? What is this reality that I am perceiving with my senses? Well, in order for me to answer that, or even to begin to approach answering that question, I guess it would be important to provide perspective. Perspective in context with regards to, where do you really truly fit in the cosmic order of schemes? What if you were granted the cosmic powers, the omnipotent powers of being able to compress the universe in size, so much so that the Milky Way galaxy was now the size of the contiguous United States of America? How big would the planet Earth be then? Well, I found a YouTuber that did a fantastic job visualizing just that.
So how big would we be? How big is the sun on this huge scale? Well, on a scale where the galaxy we live in is the diameter of America, the sun would be about this big. So that's already completely crazy, but it doesn't end there, because I'm not standing on a hill here. On a scale where the Milky Way is the size of the United States, our giant sun would easily fit between the ridges of the fingerprint on the tips of our fingers. It would be half the size of a red blood cell. This is a single grain of sand in comparison. It's taken me 2 minutes to walk over to where Earth is, here, one fingerprint ridge away. Here's our little blue marble. On this scale, it's 3 times smaller than the coronavirus. Isn't it crazy, but wonderful, that if our galaxy were shrunk down to the size of a continent, the orbits of the planets of the solar system would be the swirls on the tip of our finger? We're always interested in how big the universe is, but the galaxy we live in, the Milky Way, is so wonderfully vast and impressive.
I mean, wow. It's truly awe-inspiring and humbling, the scale of cosmic orders. But equally awe-inspiring, if not terrifyingly so, is the universe that lies within, not just the one that lies without. And what do I mean by that? Well, just as far as we can zoom out with our most advanced and sophisticated telescopes to the farthest reaches of the observable universe, the orders and magnitudes of scale that we can zoom inward and conceptualize and visualize are equally astonishing.
One of the most intriguing discoveries in modern science is the fact that there is nothing in this world that even approaches what might be called truly solid. We speak of solids, liquids, and gases. But these terms describe superficial rather than basic properties of matter. All matter, regardless of its state, is composed of invisible particles called atoms, which in turn are composed of other particles. The air we breathe, though invisible to us, is just as real as wood or metal, because it's made of the same fundamental particles. It is the arrangement of these particles and the forces that bind them together that give to a substance its special properties.
In his initial model, the atom was the smallest unit of matter and it couldn't be divided. Also, atoms couldn't be created and they couldn't be destroyed. So here we have a hydrogen atom, and this is very small. Much, much smaller than we can actually see, even with the most powerful microscopes. But we can go smaller than that. And this here we have a hydrogen atom. The size of this atom is 31 picometers, or 3.1 times 10 to the minus 11 meters. Here, to make things a little easier, I'm going to imagine a hydrogen atom. And the nucleus of this is just a single proton. I said that atoms were largely empty space, but what I really meant was almost completely empty space. If this is the size of an atom, then the nucleus would be this small. Or to put it another way, if the atom was the size of Wembley Stadium, and if you're not familiar with Wembley, then just imagine any other large sports stadium, then the nucleus would be the size of a marble on the centre circle. This proton then is 1 times 10 to the minus 15 of a metre. So can we go smaller than a proton? Most definitely. Protons are made of quarks. 3 quarks make 1 proton. And for a proton, it's 2 up quarks and 1 down quark. The up and down business is the flavour of the quark, and things are now starting to get a little bit strange here, and sizes from here on down are not actually confirmed, but we've got to go on. Holding the quarks together is another elementary particle called the gluon. A quark is 1,000th of the size of the proton. In other words, if the proton was the size of a beach ball, then the quark would be the size of a grain of sand. Quark is 1 times 10 to the minus 18 of a metre. So are we anywhere near Planck length? Not even close. Well, is there anything smaller than a quark? The smallest I could find, and this is 1,000,000 times smaller than a quark, and here we have the neutrino. This means that a neutrino is 1 times 10 to the minus 24 of a metre. Let's put that into perspective. If a quark was a kilometre in diameter, then a neutrino would again be the size of a grain of sand. Surely now we must be nearly at Planck length. Still nowhere near. Planck length is 100 billion times smaller than even a neutrino. So finally back to our final imagining of Planck length. Just as a final way of imagining just how mind-meltingly small the Planck length is, here we have a 30 centimetre or 12-inch ruler. Here we can see 1 millimetre. The human egg cell is 0.1 millimetres in diameter. Coincidentally, this is about the smallest thing that can be seen with the naked eye. The human egg cell is halfway. What I mean by that is it's halfway in size between the Planck length at one extreme, and at the other extreme we have the size of the observable universe. Let me put this another way. If this tiny egg cell here was scaled up so that it was the size of the observable universe, that's all 2 trillion galaxies, then the Planck length would be the size of this egg cell. That's really, truly tiny.
We begin with a hidden lineage of initiates, known in ancient Egypt as the Masters of the Net. These initiates knew a great secret, that behind everything in physical existence is an invisible matrix of energy, which is the source of all physical manifestation. It is this invisible energy matrix which materializes everything in the physical world through the patterns we call sacred geometry. The term sacred geometry is comprised of geo, meaning earth, and metry, meaning measurement. Sacred geometry literally means the sacred measure of the earth. We can also think of this in a larger sense, of sacred geometry meaning the divine blueprints of consciousness and energy. Always keep in mind that what stands behind this physical structure is the net, the vibrational matrix of energy that this form crystallized out of. Remember that the physical form can change immediately when the background energy matrix changes. Everything is energy, so sacred geometry patterns are crystallized forms showing us the invisible vibrational matrix, which is the higher reality.
And it is this higher plane of reality in which I'm striving to self-actualize into, to manifest into a reality in which we all can experience and share. So if you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned because we're going to continue into this ascension. I love you all. Peace. I will never settle. I will never give up. Trying to make it better now. It's pedal to the metal till I'm chilling in the middle. Plucking strings like your pedal. From the suburbs to the ghetto. Ready for whatever. I just wanna go to heaven.
That's why I thank God, thank for. Gotta use your think wise and think more. Yeah, goes against the code to settle, homie. I would never let up. Press the pedal to the metal. What you thought, shit, I'm a rebel.
Never had to sacrifice.